Government scrambles to repair its budget deficit, calls are growing for new ways to raise revenue. A growing number of experts, including rock star French economist Thomas Piketty, are calling for a blast from the past: inheritance taxes. Australia got rid of them in the late 1970s and early 80s, but political reality means a new inheritance tax would be dead on arrival. Michael Yander reports.
They say there are two certainties in life: death and taxes. Most countries combine the two through inheritance tax. Australia used to, but hasn't since the early 1980s, after Queensland Premier Sir Joh Bjelke-Petersen started a race to the bottom by abolishing his state's death duties in 1977. The complete absence of inheritance taxes leaves Australia at odds with the majority of developed nations. It's an anomaly noted by renowned French economist Thomas Piketty, who recently visited Australia.
If you have labour income of $50,000 or $100,000, you're going to pay a lot of tax. But if you receive $1 million or $2 million in property from your family, the tax rate will be 0%. There's no inheritance tax, which is very small as a tax rate.
Dr. Piketty has an unlikely local ally in fund manager and venture capitalist Mark Carnegie.
I think that there's great evidence that more equitable distribution of capitalism is actually pro-growth.
Charities also stand to benefit from death duties. The US has estate taxes and also has a strong culture of philanthropy. Do you think if we had an inheritance tax here in Australia that we'd actually see a fair bit more philanthropic gift giving than we do?
Yeah, and I think it'd be really, really good, because I think you would use it as a spur to get people to start thinking about philanthropy, giving the money away, because people just hate giving it to the government.
And the push for death taxes has plenty of more conventional allies in the economics profession.
Well, here we are in an economics faculty at the University of Sydney. If you asked anyone in this building, they would say, I think, that an economic evaluation of inheritance tax rates it highly. Certainly Ken Henry, when he chaired the last major review of Australian taxation, said that on economic grounds, inheritance tax has to get the big tick.
Not all economists agree. The US Tax Foundation published a paper calling for that country's estate tax to be abolished. Despite often high tax rates, as much as 55% in Japan, generous thresholds and exemptions plus avoidance mean inheritance taxes raise little revenue. Belgium raises the largest proportion of its taxes from the dead, but even there it makes up just 1.6% of total tax revenue. And despite his in-principle support for inheritance taxes, Mark Carnegie agrees.
The idea that an inheritance tax is going to be introduced is dead on arrival. The amount of revenue that you raise compared to votes lost means it is just politically impossible to actually get through.
The difficulty of reintroducing an inheritance tax was highlighted when the Greens dropped it from their policy platform a few years ago, meaning no mainstream party in Australia has it on their agenda.
The New South Wales position within the Greens was to advocate its retention, but they lost to the majority of other states, and the policy therefore doesn't exist. But there's a move within the Greens to get it back.
But Mark Carnegie thinks there are other areas where the government should cut inefficient and inequitable tax breaks for the wealthy.
Billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars of tax concessions, being superannuation negative gearing, were put in place to actually create pro-enterprise, pro-savings initiatives. They weren't put in place in order to let people sit on their arse and wait for their parents to die.
And as for his own children?
They understand the point of principle, but obviously they don't want to. More is better, but they understand my point of view.
Frank Stillwell agrees with Mark Carnegie about the social benefits of burying some wealth inequality with each passing generation.
In the absence of inheritance taxes, the inequalities that develop within any one generation become perpetuated intergenerationally, and all sorts of social stresses follow from that.
Besides which, Australians are used to the concept of pay-as-you-go taxation.
Who is it who draws that distinction between pay-as-you-earn and pay-as-you-go taxes?
Well, this really would be pay-as-you-go.
Indeed, pay-as-you-go.